Happy Tuesday and welcome back, Heat Seekers. This is the Dynasty Heat Seekers Fantasy Football Show. We are changing things up like we like to do. We are a group that's always trying to get better. So we are tonight going to help you get better by giving you some guys that maybe you want to buy or potentially want to sell if the price is right. With that being said, I am joined by the dynamic duo of Mr. Rob Sullivan. How are you tonight, my friend?
Doing great. Thank you very much. Anthony, how you doing, my friend?
I'm also doing great. Thank you, guys. Glad to be here.
Glad to be here. And Craig, no, we are not going to start with that big IDP news. Go to rotoheat.com so you can find out all the latest late-breaking IDP news. With that being said, we are getting right into it. So the news and notes will be scrolling at the bottom. Anything pertinent there, you probably already know. So if you want to know more, don't forget, drop comments, drop likes, do all those things. We will get to comments and questions at the second half of the show. First half of the show, we are going to do some buys and some sells. So these are in no specific order. We all have very differing opinions, and it'll be fun to get to them. So, Mr. Sullivan, you go ahead and start first. This was your idea, I believe. So what are we doing? Who are we talking about?
You want me to start with a buy or do you want me to start with a sell?
Start with sell.
Okay.
He's always so pessimistic. He's like, yeah, let's start with the
always
negative.
The negative.
Get it out of the way, baby.
So my sell is
a positive.
My sell is Tennessee Titans running back Derrick Henry. And you might go, what? He's the running back 1 overall. Well, the dude's on pace for 540 touches this season. He's going to break eventually. And I know that everyone thinks that Derrick Henry is bulletproof and the man can do no wrong, but I've been on the bandwagon of selling Derrick Henry all offseason, and I'm still on it now. He's off to a great start. And if you have him on your fantasy team, good for you. But, he's the 8th individual to rush for over 2,000 yards in a single season. And the previous 7 have really struggled the immediate season after that. All of them had the lowest yards per carry of their entire careers. All of them saw a decrease in total yardage. The most successful was Barry Sanders, and he rushed for 34% less yards the season after. So Derrick Henry is my sell. I don't think he's going to maintain this torrid pace that he's on. And I think you're never going to get more for him than you would right now.
Okay.
So
right.
I think, I don't hate it. Every Derrick Henry share I sold last year at the end of the season. Because at some point, you can't continue this pace up. That being said, this is a dynasty show, so I'm looking at it from a dynasty perspective. That is a perfect sell candidate if you're not the guy that's at the top trying to compete and win it again. So that's the thing for me. It's always where, we talk about it every week. Where's your roster at? What's your roster look like? Derrick Henry is the perfect. If you're trying to compete, this guy will help you. If you're not trying to compete, get everything you can for him. But Anthony, what's your thoughts on Mr. Derrick Henry? I
think I heard Sully saying this last year. I think I heard him saying it the year before. I think if you can sell him for a great price, I'm not opposed to it. In my experience with my shares, you can't really get what he's worth anyway.
Okay, so what is he worth? What is he worth? Start there.
Well, if you're on a competitive team
mm-hmm.
and you're trying to win the championship,
like
I think you said last week, people focus too much on the future. This is about winning now, and I bet, and in my experience, I have Henry on a dynasty team, and I've never gotten an offer that would make me want to move him. Just because I know that he can get me that championship. He has gotten me that championship. And in the league where I have him this year, I expect him to get me that championship. So, I agree theoretically with the concept. But at the same time, if I'm a win now team, he's not really a guy I'm looking to take off my team.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I have a team where I'm contending and contended last year, and I have him on that team and I'm probably going to hold on to him unless someone kind of blows my doors off. But in a vacuum, I guess I should say, as looking at this from 30,000 foot level, is Derrick Henry is scream sell to me. with where he's at now to where he's probably going to be even this year, I believe. So
I like it. And it's not a bad way to go. If you can get a fair amount of value, and that's, we were having this conversation in one of my leagues for a different player, for a team that's rebuilding. Nick Chubb got traded today in a league, or is going to get traded potentially in a league that I'm in. And we're just having the conversation about, where are your teams at, and when are you willing to sell a player, and this, that, and the other. And Henry fits into that. He's been leading the league for some time and a very heavily used asset, but at some point he's going to fall off, and it's inevitable, especially with as much wear and tear as there is on that body. So,
and he's not going to be the RB1 either. Not in a PPR format.
And you're even seeing that offense begin to incorporate another running back even more in the passing game and doing some things. We're seeing more usage for Jeremy McNichols, and Darrington Evans will inevitably take that role, I would think, when he gets back, because he's a pretty talented running back. Mm-hmm. So how much more do you start seeing them integrate another running back? Are we starting to see the tea leaves that something could be changing in the running back waters in Tennessee? Who knows?
I will say he is on pace for 60 catches this year, which would absolutely blow the living doors off of anything he's done in the past. So there's some interest in the PPR brain of mine in that. So
absolutely. All right. So Mr. Leone, who are you selling and why?
Yeah, I was kind of going back and forth with a few guys. I was thinking maybe Adam Thielen because he's getting up there in age, but I decided to go with Mr. James Robinson. Robinson, especially if you're not contending, is really not someone you should be holding onto your rosters at this point, because by next season, I just don't see him getting the amount of volume he's getting now. I saw a trade recently where, you could basically get Chris Carson for him. I would much rather have Chris Carson on a dynasty team than James Robinson, just because of the two next year, who's probably going to get more touches? It's, in my eyes, Chris Carson. So while James Robinson, if you're a competitive team, like we just talked about, if he is your RB2, sure, you're probably going to have to keep him. But otherwise, if he's one of your flexes or RB3, 4, if you thought you were a competitor prior to the season, you did not have James Robinson in your top 2 starting spots. So there's a good chance that you really don't need him, and this would be the time to trade him. I think you could probably still get a decent return, even if you need a running back. You could get someone pretty comparable, but maybe younger, in a better situation for next year and beyond. So for me, James Robinson, I think, tops my list for one of the sells that I'm looking to move off my teams.
So what if in a hypothetical world, I'm just throwing a random thought out there because we know that the head coach of that team's been in the news quite a bit here recently for his shenanigans.
What?
What? So what happens if he's gone?
You just had to butt that one in there, didn't you?
I did. I poked it in.
Kind of poked it.
Wait, it was.
That just kind of rubbed up against you there. Anyway.
So what happens if Urban isn't there, and then they go back to James Robinson being heavily involved in this offense, like he should be? He was, a top 5 running back last year, and he's done well when given an opportunity. So what happens? Does that change your perspective because he's young, because he's proven it? Does he become a guy that you're interested in holding on to? Now, obviously, we don't know that answer, and we may not. But
he's heavily involved now, even
right.
with Urban there, right? with Carlos Hyde being inactive.
He didn't want him to be heavily involved.
Yeah, right. But the reality is that's all that's there, right? And Dare, last name that Brad can pronounce that I can't, isn't going to take any touches away from
Ogunbowale. Yes.
Thank you. James Robinson anytime soon. So I agree with Anthony. I think it's a good sell candidate. I also think it's, depending on your circumstances, not a bad buy candidate either, right? So if you're a non-contending team and maybe you can give Anthony a second, does that get it done?
It depends on my situation.
Sure. So maybe you give him a second, or maybe you give him a third and a young potential Chris Evans type running back situation, something. I don't know. I'm just kind of creating things.
Maybe like Gabe Davis in a second or something like that.
Well, I think that's a little rich, but anyway, I think that he's one of those fantasy assets that can work both ways for you. Now, if I'm contending, I'm inclined to keep him just because I think he's going to be relevant this season. And to Brad's point, if it's a new regime or whatever else next year, maybe he gets another shot. But undrafted free agents remain undrafted free agents for life, just like first-round draft choices remain first-round draft choices for life. That draft capital matters so much regardless. So I don't know if he's going to have – I don't know. I guess if people keep dropping like flies, he's going to be all the volume all the time. But ETN figure is coming back.
Do you think I should have went with Thielen instead of James Robinson? I don't want to sneak in an extra sell here, but or do you think you know?
I think Adam Thielen's the exact same situation as James Robinson,
okay.
but a wide receiver. Like if you're trying to win now, Thielen will probably have 8 to 10 touchdowns and 800 yards this year. But next year, who knows? Like eventually, the clock's going to strike midnight on Adam Thielen.
Cool.
Yeah, and I actually, in a league where I feel I'm in contention, but my receivers keep getting hurt, I went and traded for Thielen. I actually did a big trade and got Saquon and Thielen from an owner. But for a team that feels like it's contending, it doesn't hurt to go target a guy like that for sure.
Yeah. Who are you selling, Bradley?
First, I want to remind everyone in the chat, we're going to get to questions after our buy-sell segment. So just keep the questions coming in. We're not ignoring you guys. We're going to get to
And the chat is exactly why I'm selling Derrick Henry. So thank you, chat.
Yeah. For me, so you threw out the idea of a buy-sell show. And as I was thinking about it from a dynasty perspective, it's so hard to consider what's really a sell because there's so many factors that go into it. But I figured, you know what? Let's go crazy. Let's do something stupid. George Kittle, San Francisco tight end. For me, tight end is such a tough position because there's not a lot of elite options. And Kittle's been not great this year. Like right now, I think he's at like tight end 11 or 12. I mean, at this point, you can target plenty of other guys and make it work, but the return you can get for Kittle, because I'm still seeing Kittle get crazy returns. I want to load up on a lot of these young wide receivers, some of these young guys that could last me for 3, 4, 5 years. If I have another tight end on my roster that I like maybe a young one, because if you drafted Kittle in 17 and then you drafted one of these other young guys here recently, a Fant or some of these other guys, you have plenty of potential, or Cole Kmet, is your number 2, then I would consider trading a guy like Kittle and getting a big return, because right now he's not really giving you a big return. And I'm not saying he won't. This team's in transition right now, though, so anything's possible. So might as well sell while you can get the most you can for him. It's a crazy idea. I wouldn't necessarily do it in all situations. But if my team had a solid tight end behind him that was at least one of those guys that could get you the 9 point whatever Mr. Sullivan says is tight end 1 numbers on a weekly basis, I would definitely consider it, because you can get a way, way bigger return on him than you can basically anyone that isn't Kelsey or Waller. And, Kelsey and Waller, you obviously are untouchable because they produce so well, but Kittle's been struggling. I mean, and it's not his fault. I mean, that offense has been all over the place. Lots of running backs, lots of, quarterback situations going on there, but why not? Sell while it's hot, see what happens, go crazy. I know I did.
I don't dislike it. And, to be totally transparent, TJ Hawkinson has jumped George Kittle in my dynasty tight end rankings. Kittle's down to 4. I think it's a tough situation to read right now, because you have a change in quarterback. You have sort of an uncertain backfield. San Francisco, ever since going to the Super Bowl, has been a mess, right? They've been struggling with massive injuries and things all over the place. George Kittle himself has endured some injuries in the last season. I'm not opposed to selling George Kittle at all. My only thing to that would be is I think you're potentially selling him at his lowest point that he's been at since he broke out. So, maybe you consider selling George Kittle, but you hang on to him and see what the transition to Trey Lance does for Kittle and that offense. Because I don't want to sell George Kittle when he's tight end 10 and then all of a sudden he goes back to being tight end 3. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not opposed to selling. I'm not opposed to selling anyone, right, as long as you get value for what you believe you're doing here. But I just, the whole supply and demand, right? Like Kittle's kind of at a low point to me, and would be why I would try to not sell him right now. In fact, I might try to buy him right now because of that.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue for me, because I think Sully just hit the nail on the head. I mean, if anything, his value is so low to the point where even if you were considering selling him, now isn't the time. I think if anything, his value can only get higher from this point forward, especially if Trey Lance, takes the starting job, does well with it this week against Arizona. Out of the bye week, it could easily be his job the rest of the season now. And I only expect Kittle to get better with Trey Lance as the season goes on. I heard a stat today of like deep ball throws. Garoppolo has none on the season. And so, and Kittle, you say what you want about tight end. Kittle is one of the few tight ends that can get a deep ball reception. He's great at those 50-50 toss-ups. I think, if anything, Kittle's a buy. So I strongly disagree with this take. Like Sully said, look, I'll sell anything if I get the right value for him. I just don't think the value's there right now for Kittle to do that. And so, if anything, he's a hold or a buy for me.
Wrong. Yeah, and I don't hate it. Like I said, I've seen, and I was trying to find the trades that I saw recently, but I had seen in a couple leagues, and I don't remember which ones they are now, or I'd pull them up, where the trade came through, and I was like, you really traded and got all that for Kittle? But I couldn't pull it up while you were talking, so I can't support my facts with anything. I will also add that the infusion of tight end talent in last draft, this draft, next year's draft with like Kate Otten and Meyer and Billingsley. I mean, there's enough talent that I'm not super concerned if you are one that trades him this year, you can't recoup that value. And, and even now, I mean, we haven't seen Kyle Pitts ascend, but Pitts could ascend into the realm of pushing him out of the way like Hawk has for you, Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah.
Goddard, Andrews, Fant. There's a lot of other guys that could start pushing if Kittle does not get back on track, because right now we've just not seen, and I don't blame him for it. But all right, Mr. Sullivan, who are you buying? Oh, go ahead.
Just one last thing on tight ends. I just think we're seeing a bigger tight end tier among, there used to be sort of 3 tight end tiers. There was the big 3, and then there was the Fant, Goddard, Hawkinson kind of tier, and then there was the everybody else. It seems to me that it's the Waller, Kelsey tier, and a little bit of Hawkinson, Kittle, and then everybody else. Like it's, tight end scoring is up this year through 4 weeks. 10.7 points is required to be a top 12 tight end. But at the end of the day, it'll water itself back down to 9.63 like it has for the last 11 years. So,
all right. So who are you buying?
I am buying Calvin Ridley. I am buying the number 1 wide receiver in the Atlanta offense. And I understand that his quarterback is not so good, but his targets are there. His catch percentage is still over 64%. He's not scoring touchdowns, which is sort of the thing that number 1 tight ends in Atlanta seem to not do. But I think Calvin Ridley is going to be closer to the Calvin Ridley of last season to finish out this year than he has been in these first 4 games. I think he's down around wide receiver 22. He's still at about a 24-25% target share in that offense. His ADOT is lower, which hurts him, and he's not scoring as much, but he's still going to get the catches. He's just not getting the yards and the touchdowns. But I believe it'll come, and I believe that talent is there. And I think we saw a little bit out of Atlanta last week against Washington. There's a little bit of life in that offense for the first time this season. I think they're, as a unit, going to improve. So I'm buying Calvin Ridley.
It doesn't hurt when he's getting targeted double-digit times a game. Like at some point, it's going to come through the other side. And, when you look at his production, I mean, in most scoring formats nowadays, he's still getting you double-digit points. He may not be getting elite level production, but he's still, giving you right around wide receiver 2 value. And if you can get him for wide receiver 2 price, I'm in on that. I'd buy it for sure.
He's on pace for 179 targets this year.
Yeah, I have nothing to add here. I agree with you guys 100%. I think that it's a great buying opportunity for Calvin Ridley. I think it's a great idea, and I think people should do that. Similarly, if I can transition into my buy, since it's in a pretty similar segue, Allen Robinson is my buy. Very similar, kind of storyline. Not a great quarterback, still elite wide receiver 1 talent level. And I think you can actually buy Allen Robinson cheaper than Calvin Ridley, just because maybe he's a little bit older and there's maybe some more concerns about his quarterback year on end. But again, I think he's another wide receiver to target because I only expect him. I mean, what is he, wide receiver like 60 or something right now? Like it's absurd.
Yeah, he's wide receiver 60, averaging 8.5 points per game.
Yeah, and I mean, he can't get any lower than that. And I do think his value has taken a significant hit. I even saw Ray in the chat mentioned him, like specifically, like, what are we going to do with Allen Robinson right now? So I think in a dynasty league, he's someone to buy. And if you already have him, you just hold and hope they can get their offense together. They lost David Montgomery for a few weeks. They're probably going to have to throw the ball a little bit more. Allen Robinson should be able to soak up a lot of those targets.
11, 4, 6, 3. That's his targets each game this year. Like, what? Yeah. Your best player is not getting targeted. Are you kidding me? You have to go get him. The thing that I don't know, and when I saw that you guys put him as he's a great buy candidate for sure. I just don't know if I'm the Allen Robinson owner and I've been following Roto Heat all these years because it's the right thing to do. And we talk up Allen Robinson as a high-end elite wide receiver. Like, we've been telling you he's so good for so long. How are you going to, be willing to sell him for a wide receiver 2 value? Like, that's the other side of the coin is like, who in their right mind would really be willing to part with him for that kind of low, the low price of $29.95?
We're telling the Roto Heat listeners to go buy him. They know we love him.
Right.
And you're banking on the fact that, hey, the guy who owns him in your league doesn't pay attention to this channel, doesn't pay attention to talent, and is going to overreact to this poor performance thus far and be willing to sell him.
And at 28 years old, he's still.
I was going to say, how old is he? He's 28.
Yeah, he's only 28, and the way that he plays, it's not like his game's predicated on speed or any of that. Like, he's going to play. I would guess, 32, 33, 34 if he's not injured, significantly. I mean, the way that he plays the game, he does a great job route running. He does a great job, high pointing the ball if need be. He could be a red zone threat as he gets a little older and slows down, at some point. I love the buy because he can still give you good wide receiver value after this year.
Yeah, I like the buy regardless of format. I like the buy in redraft. I love the buy in dynasty. The problem in Chicago isn't Allen Robinson, and it isn't whoever the quarterback is. It's the head coach calling plays and the absolutely trash offensive line. Those are the challenges in Chicago. Now, even if Allen Robinson struggles all year and he finishes as wide receiver 36 or something along those lines, he's not going back to Chicago next year. They're not going to bring him back. He's certainly not going to want to go back, and they're not going to tag him a second time. So picture Allen Robinson in your favorite location, and that's where he could end up, right? So he's 28 years old. He's not 82. Like, he's got a lot of tread left on his tire. He missed a full season less, I think, 8 snaps due to a knee injury back in, I think it was 2017. There's a lot left here. And it's a great call by Anthony to say, go and buy Allen Robinson, because there are going to be people that are frustrated and see that Darnell Mooney is getting more targets than Allen Robinson, and Cole Kmet is probably getting as many targets as Allen Robinson, wondering what's going on in that offense. So,
right.
Speaking of what's going on in that offense, that transitions to my buy candidate, Daniel Jones, New York Giants quarterback.
I don't think that transitions at all, but that's okay.
I mean, mine was pretty poor too, so I'll give him that.
Yeah, so it's been really interesting to see, even though the Giants as a team aren't great, Daniel Jones is like a top 7-8 quarterback in fantasy. I mean, like, he does nothing but produce right now, and he's not looked bad all season. I know that people hate him because he's not been good, and this team stinks because they're coaching and blah, 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 blah. But from a fantasy perspective, this guy's been producing. Like, in the leagues that I'm winning, I bought this guy in the offseason, and I've been starting him and winning with him. I'm like, he's a guy that you can get cheap. I mean, unfortunately, he's still hard to sell. Like, in our Roto Heat Superflex league, I've been trying to sell him because my team is rebuilding and nobody wants to pay anything for him. They don't even want to pay a first for him. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm not selling a 24-year-old starting quarterback. in the super flex for that low. I mean, anything lower than at least I don't even care if it's a late first, but it's still a starting quarterback who's a top 10 quarterback in fantasy right now. And so a lot of the comments I hear back is, well, he won't be for much longer. Well, unless you're a Mara and you run the Giants, you can't tell me that. Like, yeah, he's not winning them games and he may not be elite level, but remember, he took over for a guy that was terrible at the end of his career and he's looked better.
And if I can interject here.
Sure.
People said the same thing about Darnold last year, Sam Darnold. Oh, he's not going to be the quarterback in New York anymore. He's not going to be the quarterback. Why would I pay that for him? And, even if he's not the quarterback for the Giants next year, that doesn't mean he's not going to be a quarterback anywhere else next year. I mean, you could easily see him maybe on the Steelers. I mean, who are they going to start next year? It's not like there's no other opportunities for Daniel Jones, even if his team decides to move on from him, just like we saw in the other New York City with the Jets.
Yeah, and when you look at, obviously a lot of folks aren't looking into next year's class already, but I am. There's not a lot of quarterback options. Like Carson Strong and then a lot of yuck right now in the college level that could come out in the draft. So if Daniel Jones isn't the quarterback here, he could be somewhere.
Does Cincinnati have a pretty good quarterback coming out? Who's there?
Desmond Ridder.
Yeah, I like him.
I like him, and Cincinnati's been very good this year. Like they're beating up people and should get a chance for a playoff spot if they keep this up. I don't know what to make of his game at the next level, and obviously that's for a different show. Although this is a Dynasty show, so it's kind of for this too. But for another time. But I like Ridder. I like the kid. I like his moxie and his poise in the pocket. I just don't know how he projects to the next level.
I think you have your buys and sells backwards, Brad. I think you should be buying George Kittle and selling Daniel Jones.
I'm trying to sell Daniel Jones, but nobody's buying him, so that's why I'm buying him.
Yeah, and I'll be totally transparent. The shares that I have of Daniel Jones, I could not give away last season when I was trying to.
That's the issue.
So I ended up just keeping him, and guess what? I just start him every week, and he's been doing well. And the biggest reason that he's fantasy relevant is he's running like crazy. We saw it last year, except he fell down on the 25-yard line, or else, maybe we could have sold him that week. But I don't know. I think there's something to be said for name value, right? And you say George Kittle, and everybody's like, oh, George Kittle's one of the best tight ends. Doesn't even matter if they watch football in the last 18 months. And you say Daniel Jones, they're like, oh, Daniel Jones, he's no good. He fumbles all the time, and he's not a good quarterback. Well, Daniel Jones isn't fumbling and turning the ball over this year, and he's got the biggest cast of who knows what as his pass catchers, and he's producing. So I try to sell him, and I get it. You are trying, and you're not going to get much, but I don't know if I'm buying him because I do think he's at probably the apex of his production. Like, I don't think he's going to – what is he averaging, 24 points a game? I don't see him keeping that pace up.
He's the quarterback 7, I think, right now. And I think I agree with that. I think buying now is probably not the best time because, like Sully just said, in a few weeks from now, he could be out of the top 12. And if you
it's a fine line to outside of the top 12. It's in one QB leagues, right? So I don't dislike the call.
It's tough. And a super
it's more a super flex conversation,
easier.
Right? Yeah.
But he's ahead of Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, Justin Herbert. I mean, those are all the guys that are
settle out.
Those are the guys behind him.
But he's not going to stay above them. You know what I mean? So,
I wouldn't think so.
So no, buying
I don't think so either.
So
I didn't think Josh Allen was going to be the number one quarterback last year either, though.
Well, I mean,
things happen when you run.
And when you look at Daniel Jones' schedule, he's got soft defenses coming up. Cowboys, the Rams are like 24th, I think, right now. But then he's got Panthers, very good defense. But Chiefs, soft. Raiders, middle of the pack. Buccaneers, softer. Then he's got the Eagles, which somehow their defense is playing better. Yeah, I mean, so it's not like he's got a terrible – he could keep it up for sure. I don't see him doing it. But, if you can get him for what people are trying to offer me for him, I'd buy him. I mean, most people are offering me a second in Superflex.
Yeah,
I don't have any 1 QBs.
No, I wouldn't give – that's ridiculous.
So
selling him for that is silly.
Yeah, he's actually my QB2 on one of my 1 QB leagues. I have Stafford and Daniel Jones as my backup. I'm very content on just riding with those two.
absolutely. This year,
Yeah, I have an odd number of teams with Daniel Jones and Ben Roethlisberger on them, and Ben Roethlisberger is not ever seeing the field for my teams. So
yeah.
Even though Anthony loves him.
Let's watch the tape.
Pretty
on
high
that.
on him last week.
Let's go back and watch the tape.
Pretty high on him last week.
All right. So what we do know about Anthony, he loves Zach Moss and Ben Roethlisberger.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
All right. So with that being said, it's Q&A time, folks. Make sure you drop your questions in the chat. We will get you all taken care of. First, we start off with our boy Ray Fryer over on Facebook. Says, CMC, what are we looking to get in return if we were trading him?
I got to take this one first. Ray, I think a second is fair.
Oh, so you offered him a second for CMC?
No, he asked me if I was interested. I am. I think a second is very fair trade value for CMC.
If you're trading a top 12 running back, just any top 12 running back, what are you typically looking for in return?
The interesting conversation that I've been having with folks lately is it feels like no matter where the running back is, the value is dropping on them unless they're like CMC.
Right.
I mean, because even I have
Sorry.
Chubb in a league where I'm trying to trade him because I just don't think I'm going to win for at least 2 years. And people don't really want to pay for him. I'm like, this is Nick Chubb, not Bradley Chubb, Nick Chubb that I'm trying to trade you. And people are looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, Nick Chubb's a running back 1.
I struggle with valuing I almost forgot his name. I struggle with valuing CMC for the reasons being John Luke, JL, the legend.
That's the
CMC
reason why.
Is CMC is a top 12 running back.
He gets us all for Clemson.
CMC is a top 12 running back with a top 24 wide receiver built in, right? Like he's the ultimate cheat code that there is in fantasy football. But is he still is what I keep kind of struggling with and wondering is now the time to get out on Christian McCaffrey, right? Like we know we've seen and read what Rick's done on those 400 touch running backs. It's real. It's legit. And we've now seen 2 straight seasons where Christian McCaffrey's been banged up. There's chances are he is going to return and play this week, but who knows, right? So
the wheels are falling off. The wheels are falling off these top tier running backs. We already saw it with Dalvin Cook. You already mentioned Derrick Henry. We're seeing it with Barkley. Barkley's value is coming up now after last week, but prior to this week, his value totally tanked, and it's not going to take another, significant injury, even if it's just this hampering thing for CMC. We're going to see his value start slipping, and you cannot trade Christian McCaffrey for what you could have traded him for last year.
No,
I'm being straight honest with Ray. I was kidding originally. I'm being honest now. So yes, I do think you can still trade CMC, but the question is, what are you going to get in return? Could you trade DJ Moore in a second? I mean, is that a fair trade if you're rebuilding? What do you think, Sully?
I wouldn't take that. I'm not taking anything outside of a first round draft pick and 2 startable assets for my roster.
So I've been converting a lot of my running back shares to wide receivers that are going to produce just as well, if not better, because I get a longevity out of them. So a guy like DJ Moore is definitely intriguing. I would want, because DJ Moore has the potential any given week of being, kind of a wide receiver 1 in the 7 to 10 overall type range at wide receiver. Mm-hmm. I would probably still ask for like a first with DJ Moore. If you're offering me young, talented receivers that have potential, like if you're offering me some of these rookie type guys, Terrace Marshall, Rashad Bateman, I would want more. I would want 2 because, and this is the conversation I'm having for Chubb, is I asked for either of the 3. So Terrace Marshall, Jalen Waddle, Rashad Bateman, any of those 3, pick 2. And then, a high-end draft pick, kind of a first-round pick, even if it's a later, 10 to 12 range. And I feel good about that because I know those guys could potentially do that. But Ray, if your team is currently contending or
It's
competing,
rebuilding. I think he's rebuilding. I mean,
yeah,
I could be wrong. But
if you're rebuilding, then I would definitely look to get young wide receivers and picks. Like those are kind of my goals for rebuilding. Because wide receivers will last the rebuild. Like
it's not that bad. It's not that bad, Ray. It's not that bad.
That's a tough one though. It is really hard to. I've made the mistake of selling him in leagues and not getting enough, and it's a very difficult asset to try to move.
So there you go. All right. So over on Facebook, what about selling Waller in Dynasty? So this, instead of selling Kittle, he's selling Waller. So there you go, guys. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's really kind of the same conversation we had with Kittle in my mind. I mean, they're about the same age. I value them pretty much equal in my book. I might value Kittle slightly higher, but that might just be my Niners bias. I follow George Kittle on Instagram. I mean, it's like, he's my guy.
You'd probably follow him in the neighborhood.
I would. But yeah, it really, Facebook user, go back on the video about 20 minutes and replace everything I just said with George Kittle and just put in Darren Waller's name. That's pretty much my thoughts on
it. I think, what about selling Darren Waller? Sure. If you're getting what you feel is value back in return, excellent. I don't really know how to set that value on something like that. Like the Kelsey, the Waller, and I don't have Kittle in that conversation anymore, but Kelsey and Waller, those guys are unicorns. They don't exist. They're not real. I'm finally have shares of Darren Waller this year, and I'm of the opinion that you're going to pry that out of my cold dead hand. Like, I think he's just irreplaceable. With that being said, if someone is going to give you what you feel is value, then yeah, everybody's tradable. But I think Waller's a guy to hang on to, rebuilding or contending. I just think he just takes away your concerns at the tight end position, and you can go to work on the rest of your roster. But I'm not looking to move him. So
he's an interesting conversation because he's 29, but he was a converted, I don't even remember what he was. Was he a wide receiver converted to tight end? And
he
was Baltimore for the longest time, and then kind of bounced around. So he doesn't have the same tread on the tires. How long do you think his value stays here? Do you think he gets 3-4 years still?
Yeah, I think it's about the same as you can really project out for George Kittle.
Okay, so if that's
I think
the
it's
case,
actually sorry, I think it's higher than Kittle because Waller doesn't play that traditional tight end ferocious style that George Kittle does that adds wear and tear to him. Like Kittle's the best all-around tight end in the NFL by far, in my opinion, when you factor in what he does in the blocking game. But Waller doesn't play that type of role. His hand isn't in the dirt nearly as much. So I think he's got a lot more longevity.
There you go. All right, Ray Fryer over on YouTube. What do we do with Allen Robinson? So we kind of already talked a little bit about this, but what do we do with Allen Robinson? Mooney seems to be the number one look for Fields at this point.
Yeah, I think you take what the second part of what you just said and use that as ammunition to go buy him. You say, hey, Mooney is the number one look of the Fields at this point. Why do you want Allen Robinson on your team? Why don't we make a deal? So yeah, I mean, I think that you use the second part of your sentence as the reason why you can justify getting him at a good price.
So you follow Justin Fields on Instagram and you tell him to stop throwing it to Mooney and throw it to Robinson. That's what you do.
I don't worry about.
I'm going to do that right now, actually. Hold on.
I don't worry about Mooney, and I don't worry about Robinson. I don't worry about either one of them affecting each other, right? Mm-hmm. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson. Like there's, you go back to the Packers days where they had multiple top 12 tight ends. You can have multiple receivers in your offense. It's going to be a stretch for the Bears to do that based on some of the situations that they have going on. But Allen Robinson is the number one wide receiver in there, and Mooney might look that way through the targets that he's seen so far this season. But that'll even itself out. You just got to pull up the highlight of that sideline pass that Fields hit Robinson on last week and watch that on repeat for a couple of times to realize how good that wide receiver really is.
There you go. All right, so Bronson, hopefully I didn't butcher your name. Over on YouTube, welcome. Trade MT and Julio for Kamara. Yes, if they'll do it. I'd want Kamara over those two.
I would as well. In Dynasty or redraft, I'd be on the Kamara side for sure.
I think so too, but man, you got to wonder what's going on with Alvin Kamara. That guy had no targets last week. And he's got like eight on the year. Like something weird.
Definitely weird.
Yeah, but now Tony Jones is out too. I just think he's going to get peppered with touches.
Yep.
I'm trying to figure out who to pick up. Do I pick up Ty Montgomery? Do I pick up Washington? Like, got to pick up somebody from there.
I don't know if you have to. I don't know if you have to.
Let's say if Kamara doesn't get peppered with targets, he's going to start getting salty, I'm sure.
Well, they only throw the ball 20 times a game, guys, so nobody gets peppered with targets.
Very true. And just for the fun of it, I'm bringing this one up again. Frank says, come on, guys. You couldn't wait till after the Red Sox game.
You're telling me about that?
Hey, what's the score right now? I mean, I don't really
3-1.
care. Is it? Oh, they're coming back. They're coming back.
All the comeback.
Settle down.
All right, over on YouTube, Sideline Star, welcome. Can I trade Kyler and Henderson for CMC if I have Jalen Hurts on my bench? So that sounds like a 1 QB conversation.
It does, and you can. That's tough, man. I think it's risky. You know, that's one of those moves I would make if I would be way more inclined to do that if I'm like 4-0 or 3-1. And even if I lost a couple games waiting for Christian McCaffrey to come back, I'd feel much better about it. But I have a redraft league where I'm 0-4. There's no way I would do that. Like, I just can't take on CMC right now. Like, it's too risky. But generally speaking, in a vacuum, I would much rather have Christian McCaffrey. Kyler and Jalen Hurts aren't that different to me in a redraft league, where that would be pretty easy for me to just in a vacuum. Yes, I'd rather have a Christian McCaffrey side.
I don't know. I think this is pretty easy, actually. I want McCaffrey and Hurts.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where, I mean, if you're 0-4, like I'm 0-4 on a team, right? Let's just pretend I have Kyler and Henderson, and I need to win like now. You know, I can't risk going 0-5 without if I'm starting Henderson this week. I mean, you just can't. I couldn't see myself doing that myself. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, if you're
winless,
0-4,
sure.
I don't disagree. But if you're 0-4, Anthony, like you are, you should just draft it better, and then you wouldn't have that scenario.
Dude, I have this team. I have Allen Robinson. I have Robbie Anderson. It's like I ended this draft thinking, man, I'm going to win this league, and now I'm looking at it like, what the hell happened?
Fantasy football, hey?
Yeah.
It's a fickle beast, but we love it every minute of it.
Yeah.
All right, Tony Snow, welcome back. Hello, guys. I lost Singletary. Should I go after P. Ryan?
Yes. Now,
Singletary hurt?
No, I think maybe he lost him on his like depth chart. You know, like he was like 8th or 9th down the list, and he just doesn't want to use him. No, I mean I would certainly use P. Ryan this week ahead of Singletary. I don't even know if Singletary is really rosterable at this point. I know Brad loves Zach Moss. That's a quote from last week. But P. Ryan will probably be an RB2 this week, and there's no guarantee that Mixon will be back, just like last year. Ankle sprains can be tricky. So, yeah, I think P. Ryan is a guy to go after this week. Damian Williams would top my list on the waiver, situation for everyone.
And if you checked out our waiver wire video here on YouTube, you would see that he was for us as well.
Oh, good. And I would imagine P. Ryan was probably second.
P. Ryan wasn't on the list, to be honest, Anthony.
Oh, are you guys expecting Mixon to come back, or was it too soon to tell at the time you guys recorded the video?
Weren't really sure.
The report. I'm about to say the reports weren't out at that point that he was for sure done for a little while. P. Ryan's definitely a guy to get to look at, but I wonder where Chris Evans falls in the mix.
Exactly what I was just going to say.
That's my concern.
I'd say Evans is the pass catching guy if there is a pass catching guy. And since he'll trail more often than they lead, even though if you talk to a Bengals fan, they're going to the Super Bowl this year. I think the reality is they're not quite there yet. So I think they're going to struggle in more games than they're not. And I think Mixon's probably going to miss upwards of 2 or 3, maybe more. And I think it's a pretty split backfield. So I don't know what's wrong with Singletary. If there is something wrong with him, I missed it. I think he still has a role in that Buffalo offense. He's kind of splitting the work with Zach Moss. Moss is absolutely the goal line guy, but I would value Singletary higher than Pirine at this point myself.
Yeah, he's still getting double-digit carries. I mean, even last week against the Texans, he had 14 and a reception. The week before, he had a reception, 11 for 26 against Washington. But Washington's pretty good against the run. They're not terrible against the run, I should say. They're not right now. They're not playing to their potential. But 11, 13, 11, 14, and then he's getting some receptions every game. But Zach Moss has the touchdown upside, which is going to make his stat lines look better if you look at just the overall numbers. So I think folks are really starting to.
I mean, how valuable, though, is Singletary in this offense? I mean, yeah, he gets the ball in between the 20s, but I mean.
Yeah, but PPR.
He's not catching passes. I mean,
Singletary?
3-2-1-1. So he hasn't gotten a lot of receptions so far.
Yeah, Derrick Henry has more catches than Singletary.
Derrick Henry's an RB1. Come on, let's not even have this conversation.
but catches.
But what is Pirine? Pirine's not going to catch the football. And he might get 15 and he might get 15 carries. Those 3 catches are going to be worth 8 carries.
But this week you're going to start Singletary over Pirine? I mean, that's really the question, right? Like
who's Buffalo got? Cincinnati has Green Bay. Who does Buffalo have?
I don't know. Let's check.
Give me a second, I'll tell you.
Come on.
The Chiefs. They have the Chiefs.
Oh, yeah, I'm starting Singletary. Thanks very much.
I would start both backs against the Chiefs.
I would
both
start
playable.
But I would also start Pirine this week. This doesn't mean that I don't think that Pirine can give me a flex type performance because I think he can.
The tough thing is Green Bay's better against the run than they've let on. I mean, even look at – I know Najee doesn't have a great offensive line, but he carried the ball 15 times for 62 yards. They've held running backs pretty well in check. And I don't want to say in check to the point of like not productive, but typically the receiving out of the backfields where the running backs have been helpful. So Cincy, it's going to be tough to trust the running backs this week against Green Bay because you don't know what to expect. If Pirine is going to do both, then he's perfectly fine to start. If they're going to use him as a receiver out of the backfield, I just don't know that they are. Right?
Yeah. Sully, who did you say was going to get 28 fantasy points last week? I don't remember. It just came on.
That was Chuba Hubbard. I had 25 carries for 28 points. Brad had 13 touches for 12.
I think I had
you had
15 points.
15.
What did he
15.
get? I'm just
I think
curious.
he had about 15. I think you were right.
Okay. All right, cool.
I think he already knew the answer. He just wanted you to repeat it.
If Anthony wants to take a victory lap after week 3,
I'm telling you right now,
go crazy.
Let's bet Pirine over Singletary.
For what, this week?
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, you don't sound
too
we
betting like five United States of America greenbacks? Is that what we're betting on this?
No, you got to wear a Yankees hat next week.
Sure, no problem.
All right, so Frank S. wants to know, can you speak on Robert Woods and Antonio Gibson?
Sure. Who's Antonio Gibbs?
Gibson.
Oh, Gibson. Well, I mean, in Dynasty, I think Robert Woods is a good buy low. In redraft, the team I have with Allen Robinson and Robbie Anderson. Guess who else I have? Robert Woods. I wouldn't be buying Robert Woods in a redraft league because I'm not as confident that he's really going to pan out this year. It's going to be really, kind of inconsistent. But I do think in a dynasty league, he's a better buy low just because I think his value would justify it, taking the chance on him. So I guess that's a little weird. I don't know if that makes sense. You have deeper benches in dynasty, so it's easier to take chances on guys like that. In a redraft league, it's really hard to hold dead weight. So I don't think the value makes sense to trade for him. So if you have Robert Woods, you have to hold him. I have him. I have to hold him. I'm going to try not to start him, although I might have to. And then Antonio Gibson. I mean, for me, he's just a stud. You start him every week. You don't even worry about the matchup, and he's not someone to really sell in my mind.
Gotta love those RB2 numbers he's putting out.
I don't worry about either one of them, to be totally honest with you. I think Robert Woods will still carve out a role in this offense. Cooper Kupp is not going to, Cooper Kupp has scored 49% of his 2020 total already in 2021. Like, you think about, he put up like 208 PPR points last year. He's like 110 right now or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, Cooper Kupp is going to slow down a little bit. I think Van Jefferson is a little bit more of a concern to the Robert Woods fantasy manager than anything else. But at the same time, that's a pretty good offense with a pretty good quarterback that's going to be able to spread the ball around. I'm not too worried about Robert Woods. He might not be high-end wide receiver 2, but I think he's still going to nestle somewhere in to the top 24, 28 and be absolutely relevant for your team. And I agree 100% with Anthony about Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, and also this is a buy sell video, so I just want to throw this in right now. Cooper Kupp, I think, is an incredible sell high right now.
Shut your dirty mouth.
I don't expect his value to be any higher than it is right now. I just don't.
No,
so,
I don't think that's hard. It's hard to say that it will be.
Yeah. You could probably trade Cooper Kupp right now for DJ Moore plus a second. And for me, it's just a no-brainer. You get a little bit younger. You still have wide receiver 1 upside, and his value will not get any higher than it is right now. So I just wanted to throw that in there real quick.
Thanks. All right, so
I love you guys, man. I do.
So this is a fun bringing the heat kind of take. Phobos on YouTube says N'Keal Harry is the number 1 target people should be trying to trade for before he breaks out.
Angry face.
Angry emoji. How do you feel about that?
I think the only thing that N'Keal Harry is going to break out of is prison if he ever gets arrested.
Look, every offseason, I've written the Dynasty Hidden Gems, and one of the players I targeted this past offseason that kind of blew up was Elijah Mitchell. Obviously, that's a different position, blah, 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 blah. But it just goes to show you can get players for 3rd, 4th round picks and then have them just explode for value out of nowhere, completely unexpected. So if you can get N'Keal Harry for like a 4th round pick, which you probably can, if you have the roster space, yes, 100% yes. Get guys like this on your roster, and you never know when their value can just, boom, just explode. What would it take for N'Keal Harry to get that jump in value all the
Targets, catches, yards,
fantasy How about a trade? Boom.
Who's trading for it?
It doesn't. You don't know.
Detroit should.
You don't know. All it would take is
Detroit should trade for any receiver they can.
All it would take is one unexpected move, and you'll be able to instantly double his value on a trades. And what are you risking in doing so?
You're not
a 4th round pick.
0 times 0 isn't 2. You can't double his value by changing his location. He's not getting targets. He's not even involved in an offense that has horrible wide receivers in it. Like, he's not getting targets on he's not getting targets on the Rams. He's not getting targeted over Nelson Aguilar, Jacoby Myers, an undrafted free agent, and Kendrick Bourne, who San Francisco
all quality players.
They're all sub-level wide receivers.
I like Jacoby Myers.
Sure, he's a nice wide receiver, but yeah, sure. Is he anybody's wide receiver 1? No, he's a big slot. Right. But N'Keal Harry is not an asset that anybody should be targeting in any shape or form. And it's the same as J-Jaw. Like, sometimes it doesn't work out, and that's okay. This is one of those times.
If you can get N'Keal Harry for like a 4th round pick, and it's a deep league, and you have the space for him, I'm 100% on board with that.
I don't disagree with trading a 4th round pick for him, but you're going to do exactly with N'Keal Harry as you were going to do with that 4th round pick. Nothing.
I'm just going to say that N'Keal Harry probably isn't happy with that take.
He can follow me on Instagram.
And he was a guy that I liked coming out because the big size. He was like a 4.5 guy, a low 4.5 guy, if I remember correctly. Big catch radius. I don't know that I like the place that he went to. So I would be one of those people that if he changed locations, I would be intrigued enough that I would be interested. Like, I'm not buying him for an expensive price. And I think I have a few shares of him, and I'm not really trying to trade him or anything, but nobody's going to buy him right now anyway. But he's a guy that if you have the roster space, there's worse options to stash. Like, okay, give it a try. Maybe something happens. Maybe it doesn't.
What's worse than nothing?
No, even look,
exactly.
Because what has he given you? He's given you nothing. So I'm wondering what's worse than nothing.
Hey, he gave you one catch for 10 yards in his return. All right.
That's nice.
All right. Jason Kendall says, I would get Chris Evans instead of P. Ryan. So he's with us on the.
I could see that.
In a dynasty league, certainly. But this week, I'm on the P. Ryan train.
Yeah. I think if you need a running back to play this week, P. Ryan, is the starter. But it wouldn't surprise me if Chris Evans got the receptions, and then
I think they split that backfield and both have value, so I have no problem with either one of them.
So our boy Ray wants to know Madison or P. Ryan.
That's an interesting question.
Cook's playing, right? He's okay.
I don't know if he is, Brad. Like he's
Yeah, but they also have bye next week, I think, after this game. So
yeah.
I mean, I would probably just in a redraft league just go with P. Ryan. In a dynasty league, it's easily Madison.
JL, we're doing a P. Ryan jersey giveaway, is what I'm hearing.
Making it rain with P. Ryans. I love it.
And P. Ryan and all over the place. All right. Infinist. I traded a third rounder for Kadarius Toney. It's a good trade.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's a good trade. I mean,
great trade.
Dynasty, redraft, all of it. I mean, he's going to get targeted. So,
well, it's a bad redraft trade. I mean, depending on how many keepers.
Well, this is a third. This is a third rounder. I don't know why I said that. That could be me. That could be.
Sooner or later, we have to realize this P. Ryan is a dynasty show.
Yeah, all that P. Ryan talk made me dumb. All right, so Slim Bay, I like it. Should I trade Joe Burrow for Debo?
Yes. Well, if
this is a one QB, flex. No. Yeah, if it's a super flex, sure.
If you mean move. If it's a one
other way
QB,
around,
yes.
He means the other way around. He's still dumb from the previous.
No, if his QB is Justin Herbert, why would he need to trade a starting receiver for Joe Burrow?
No, I think he's trading Burrow for the receiver, isn't he?
Right. That's how I.
Oh yeah.
Holy P. Ryan messed you up, brother.
It's time for me to go to bed. I'm tired. It's been a
yes,
day.
You should trade Joe Burrow for Deebo Samuel
and
start Justin Herbert. That's a great trade.
But if it's a super flex, no, I would not do that.
Yeah, super flex, no.
Agree.
Oh, CXK says Deebo's a sell high.
I agree on that too.
Ooh.
Got to get value, but he is probably at his peak right now.
Maybe it's because I love Deebo, but he's so young and so talented that I still think he can get better.
Yeah, I'm not selling Deebo.
Better?
I might be buying.
I mean, I think he can get to back end wide receiver one consistently production.
The only thing holding Deebo back has
because
been
of the PPR side of it.
The only thing holding him back has been injuries. So I think
Brad, you're right. I agree.
But I mean, like we say, anybody's available. Anybody's got a price.
They do.
The $1 million man thing. All right. So Tyler Jackson traded D-Hop for Cooper Kupp. I don't know how I feel about that because they're both basically the same age.
Hopkins.
They're in very similar offenses where they're both the number one in a fast-paced offense. The thing that worries me about Hopkins is they keep using him as a decoy. Now, I know he's hurt right now and coming back from injury, but his numbers have dipped because they basically just put him on the field to take coverage away from other receivers. Like, the offense is so fast-paced and high-powered that it's like it feels like it doesn't have to run through him anymore.
I mean, in my opinion, it's only a matter of time before AJ Green gets hurt, and then at that point, even 50% of D-Hop is better than any other receiving option they have on their team in a PPR league on a consistent basis. I'd rather have Hopkins. I think he's safe, right? Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just going to say I like the trade, and I lean Kupp simply because Kyler is such a threat to take away 7 to 10 of Hopkins receiving touchdowns a year. Stafford's not going to take those away from Cup. So I think I'd be happy with either one of them. I think they're both top-tiered wide receivers. I just think Cup's going to score more touchdowns. And we saw the decline in Hopkins' touchdown total from a year ago to previous seasons as well. And that's not because he's not getting that's not because he's getting worse. It's just because he's in an offense where he has a quarterback that runs the ball and is going to rush for touchdowns. So both great options, but I lean a little bit Cooper Kupp. It's kind of crazy to say it, but I think I do.
It's fun. It's a fun one.
Yep.
All right. So Ray Fryer again in 48. Oh, so this must be one of the Roto Heat Superflex leagues.
Yeah.
I traded Kadarius Toney 2022 first, second, and third for Mike Williams, AB, and Madison. I'm making a run for the ship.
Well, I think Mike Williams is worth a first, second, and third alone. And AB and Madison are worth more than Kadarius Toney. So I like the trade.
I like it too. I don't have as much of value on Williams as you do, although I do think he's breaking out in a big way this year, except for he kind of laid a turd this week. But that was more quarterback than wide receiver if you watch that game. So good trade, Ray. I think you did well.
You don't think Mike Williams is worth a first, second, and third? I mean, you had last week you said Mike Williams is top 5 wide receiver and he's not going to go anywhere. And you bought into his production.
Yeah, I don't know if he's worth a first, second, and a third. That's a pretty hefty price.
Is he worth a first and a second?
Yeah, I guess if he's worth a first and a second, he's worth a first, second, and a third. So I don't really care too much about the third. So yeah, I could see that.
There you go. All right, so DR over on YouTube. Welcome, my friend. Trade DeAndre Swift for Jamar Chase and a keeper PPR, so in a full PPR. I don't want to do that. I'm typically going to lean the wide receiver in this case, especially because he's already looking elite and he's 4 games in. Anthony?
Yeah, I guess, are we talking about Jamar Chase or Chase Edmonds? No, I like Swift. Yeah, no, I like DeAndre Swift here.
Listen, don't do that to me. We got the Pirine brain on tonight.
I'll never forget Brad's reaction when the Lions drafted DeAndre Swift live. But he's the guy for me here. I'd
rather have Chase in this scenario, so that'd be my pick.
Me too. All right, so CXK, one of the greatest. Got an offer of Waddle and a 2022 first for Mixon. My other RBs are Najee Swift. Yes, I do it.
Slam it.
Don't even have to. I wouldn't even worry about that.
I love how he added Chris Evans on there, but yeah, I would take it.
But look at that running back roster that he has.
I know. Like, you're good at running back.
I just love how he added Chris Evans on there.
Yeah.
He's relevant, man. Come on.
Right. All right. So Brian over on YouTube says Henry and Chase for Kamara and Metcalf. Who wins? Kamara and Metcalf. I would lean. Mostly because Chase is this other piece that I like, but I'm not on the Henry boat anymore.
I can't tell you all to sell Derrick Henry and then pick that side. So Kamara and Metcalf, although I'm really worried about Alvin Kamara.
I agree with you guys.
All right. Sideline star, most appealing on waivers, Michael Carter, Gainwell, or Pollard. That's a good one.
That is a good one.
Like, for me, I would lean Carter because I think he's finally getting to the point where he's taking over that backfield. But I like all three.
Yeah, I could sit here and make an argument for all three of them. I'll take Gainwell.
I would take Gainwell as well. I agree with what you said, Brad, except I don't really have much faith in that offense and the scoring opportunities anyway. So I'd rather go with the better offense in Gainwell.
Didn't Carter score this week?
Yeah, how many touchdowns do you think he's going to end the season with?
Oh, I don't
know. Didn't Gainwell score this week too?
Probably 4. I mean, he's not.
Didn't Gainwell score too? Gainwell scored as well, I believe.
Yeah, he scored in week 1 and week 4, so he's had 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. That's more than 1 touchdown, right?
I don't know. You tell me. Yes, it's more than 1 touchdown. Don't get sloppy on me, Sullivan. All right, easy money. Sicilian says trade Joe for Chase Edmonds. He's put up better numbers with no touchdowns. I wonder what it's going to be once he sees the end zone. Mixon isn't getting any attention in the passing game, which is capping him. I struggle with that one. I don't know, man.
Easy money says, "Hey, Paisan, no.
We
keep Mixon. Keep Mixon."
Yeah. mean, I like Edmonds, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's.
We do the Sunday morning show. I did it with Rick and Bryce and Matt this week. And somebody basically told us we were idiots because Chase Edmonds is guaranteed for 10 points a week. And I was like, well, nobody's guaranteed for 10 points a week. And then every time I looked up at my TV on Sunday, Chase Edmonds was running down the field with the football. So I was like,
So it really
he's
comes
a heck
down
of
to
a
the
talent.
ceiling, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm going is, and then they get in the red zone, and James Conner comes on the field and scores a touchdown. So that ceiling is really capped for Edmonds. If he's going to score, he's got to do it from the 30-yard line in, because that same scenario that takes touchdowns away from DeAndre Hopkins takes it away from the running backs as well. So I think that I'm going to hang on to Joe Mixon. Joe's kind of a unappreciated, underrated running back, has been for a while. I still think that offense is getting better as a whole, and so will he.
Yeah, I mean, in 3 double-digit of 4 games, he scored double-digit fantasy points in like 3 or 4 games. So it's not like he was a slouch so far. He's just hurt.
Right.
Anthony?
No, I agree with you guys.
Oh, okay.
I'm all Mixon.
All right, Infinist. How do you feel about Khalil Herbert? So, fun fact, I looked at my rosters today and did not realize I own him in literally every league on my taxi squad is Khalil Herbert, and dynasties at least. So I obviously am a Khalil Herbert fan because I roster him about everywhere, it feels like. And Damian Williams is hurt already as well. Like, he should play, but he's already kind of banged up. So Herbert could get some action.
I don't think Damian Williams, even at 100%, is going to take all the work either, right?
Probably
no,
not.
I prefer Damian Williams, obviously. I would probably even lean Tariq Cohen. I know we haven't seen him this year. I think he should be back soon.
No, he's still on the
He's
pup.
still on pup. Yeah.
I don't think you're going to see him at all this year.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, in that sense, then, I don't know. I think Cohen will probably be back, but if not, someone
you might think he will as well.
I mean, Khalil Herbert or N'Keal Harry. I mean, it's easily Herbert. So, I think you could probably get Herbert right now for like a third, and I jump on that.
I'd take Anthony Leone over N'Keal Harry at this point.
I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you.
CXK gets the last question. Is Tua buy low in Dynasty? Nervous about the injury history? If the price is right.
In a super flex, maybe. It depends on the price.
Yeah.
I don't think an owner is going to sell him at a low enough price where I would target him.
Yeah, so whoever has Tua on their roster in Superflex paid a pretty high first-round rookie pick for him, and even in a one QB league, probably paid a pretty high second round pick for him. Can't even talk. It's this P Ryan.
It's the P Ryan brain.
The answer, I think, is no. Like, Tua, I think, is a backup quarterback somewhere next year, unfortunately, and it is what it is. Like I said earlier, it doesn't work out for everybody.
All right. That's it, everybody. As always, we thank you guys for hanging out with us. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the things you do. Tomorrow night, Bryce, Cody, and I will be back talking redraft specifically. So don't forget to check it out tomorrow night at 9:30, and we'll see you guys later.
Good night, guys.